It was the end of December in Praia Grande, Brazil, and the air carried that unmistakable energy of summer holidays. Families crowded the beach, couples walked hand in hand along the illuminated sidewalks, and the sound of laughter mixed with the hum of the ocean waves crashing against the shore. It was a city alive, pulsing with joy. Yet, inside one modest home, just a few blocks away from the waterfront, a very different story was unfolding, one that would leave an entire community in shock. Bruno Lorenzo Moreira was 27 years old, and in many ways, he was living the dream of so many young Brazilians. He had ambition, charisma, and the determination to create a better life. His pride was his restaurant, a small tabacaria, a Japanese-inspired sushi and temaki place that had quickly become popular among locals. He loved to work behind the counter, greet customers, share laughs with regulars, and post photos of his creations online. Bruno wasn't just selling food, he was building a brand, a future. At home, life was even more meaningful. His wife was heavily pregnant, their first child due any day now. To those who knew them, they were the picture of a couple on the brink of something beautiful: parenthood. Bruno often told his friends how excited he was to hold his baby for the first time, how he dreamed of teaching them to swim in the ocean, to walk the same beaches he had grown up on. On December 29th, 2024, it seemed like just another night. The city buzzed with tourists enjoying the festive season. Bruno kissed his wife, whispered that he would be back soon, and stepped out the door. She watched him leave, tired but reassured. He wasn't supposed to be gone long. Bruno left with a friend. According to police reports later, they had plans that weren't entirely innocent. His companion would later claim they were going to buy drugs, though even he couldn't keep his story straight. To this day, nobody knows exactly what happened after they got into that car. But one thing is certain, only one of them came back. As the hours stretched into the early morning, Bruno's wife grew restless. She sat by the window, glancing at her phone, at the clock, at the empty street outside. Midnight came and went, then 2 in the morning, then 4. She tried calling his phone, but it rang and rang until eventually it went straight to voicemail. By dawn, her hope began to turn into dread. Her body, heavy with pregnancy, ached with worry. Her hands trembled as she dialed his mother. "He hasn't come home," she whispered. On the other end of the line, silence, and then panic. Bruno's family mobilized quickly. His mother began calling everyone she knew, friends, co-workers, anyone who might have seen him. His brother drove through the streets of Praia Grande, scanning bars, clubs, restaurants, asking if anyone had spotted him. His wife, exhausted and terrified, kept her phone glued to her hand. She refreshed his WhatsApp profile over and over, watching for the little green dot that would tell her he was online. It never came. By that evening, fear had swallowed hope. The family went to the police. A missing persons report was filed, and officers began asking the usual questions. When was the last time you saw him? Who was he with? Where was he going? The answers were frustratingly vague. The friend who had been with him told one version of events, then another. He was inconsistent, hesitant, and at times evasive. Detectives didn't believe his story, but without evidence, they couldn't yet prove otherwise. Meanwhile, Bruno's face began spreading across social media. A bright smile, dark eyes, short-cropped hair. A young man who seemed full of life. Posts flooded Facebook and Instagram. "Help us find Bruno. Have you seen him?" The community responded with an outpouring of concern. Praia Grande was not a city used to mysteries like this. On January 1st, 2025, just 3 days after he vanished, investigators found the first real clue. Bruno's cell phone was discovered in the neighboring city of Mongaguá, nearly 30 kilometers away. It wasn't neatly placed or forgotten somewhere safe. It was lying on the street, cracked, as though it had been thrown from a moving vehicle. The discovery sent chills through everyone who followed the case. For the police, it confirmed what many had already suspected. This wasn't a case of a man who simply walked away. Something had happened to him, something violent. For his wife, the discovery was devastating. She clutched her belly, whispering to the unborn child inside her, promising that she would not stop searching for their father. In front of cameras, her voice shook as she begged for answers. "Please, if anyone knows anything, tell us. I just want my husband back. I want him to see his baby." Her eyes filled with tears as she spoke, and the entire country watched. But the phone offered no easy answers. There were no fingerprints, no usable data that pointed to a suspect. It was as if Bruno had been erased, piece by piece. In the following days, detectives pulled surveillance footage from the streets. They interviewed neighbors, friends, anyone who might have seen him. Rumors spread quickly. Some said he had debts. Others claimed he had enemies. Some insisted he was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. But no matter the theory, the reality remained the same. Bruno was gone, and nobody knew where. At his restaurant, customers continued to come, but the atmosphere was heavy. Workers moved quietly behind the counter. Regulars spoke in hushed voices. His absence was everywhere. In the empty chair where he used to sit, in the recipes left unfinished, in the laughter that no longer filled the kitchen. In the evenings, his family gathered in his mother's house. Photos of Bruno covered the table, lit by a single candle. His mother clutched his childhood picture to her chest, rocking gently as if trying to soothe herself. His brother paced the floor, fists clenched, muttering about justice. His wife sat silently, a hand on her stomach, lost in thought. Days turned to weeks, and still there were no answers. For the people of Praia Grande, the question became more haunting with each passing hour. What happened to Bruno Lorenzo Moreira? The new year began in Praia Grande, with fireworks over the ocean. Thousands of people gathered on the sand to celebrate. But for one family, the night was unbearable. As the sky lit up with bursts of color, Bruno's wife sat at home, staring at her silent phone. Her baby shifted inside her belly, reminding her that life was still moving forward, even as hers felt frozen in place. She whispered her husband's name like a prayer, hoping that somehow he would walk through the door before midnight struck. But midnight came, the fireworks faded, and the door stayed shut. By now, Bruno's disappearance was no longer just a private family tragedy. It was a public case. News outlets across Brazil began reporting on the missing entrepreneur, the young man with a successful restaurant, a pregnant wife, and a life that seemed to hold everything. The question on every headline was the same: where is Bruno? Police doubled down on their investigation. They brought in the friend who had last seen him for more questioning. His story unraveled quickly under pressure. First, he claimed they had gone out to meet someone for drugs. Then, when asked for details, he contradicted himself. Detectives noticed his body language, the way he avoided eye contact, the way his hands shook. Something was off. Still, without solid evidence, they couldn't charge him. He was free to walk away, leaving behind only suspicion. Meanwhile, investigators traced Bruno's final phone signals. Records showed his phone had traveled along the coastal highway, leaving Praia Grande and heading toward Mongaguá. where it was eventually found tossed onto the street. The path was suspicious. Why would he travel in that direction? Who was driving the car? Why destroy the phone? Each question only deepened the mystery. For Bruno's family, every day was torment. His mother stopped sleeping, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She replayed his last words in her head, again and again, trying to find hidden meaning. His brother spent hours searching the streets, handing out flyers, begging strangers for information. His wife, her belly now heavy and painful, sat through interviews with reporters, her voice trembling as she begged for her husband's return. The community rallied around them, offering support, food, prayers, but what they needed was Bruno. As the investigation dragged on, whispers began to spread in Praia Grande. Some people said Bruno had enemies in business, that not all of his ventures were clean. Others hinted at debts, at dangerous connections he might have made while trying to grow his temacaria. Some even suggested he lived a double life, family man on one side, risk-taker on the other. The police didn't ignore these rumors. They began digging into Bruno's financial records, his phone logs, his online messages. What they found painted a more complicated picture. While Bruno had worked hard to build his business, he had also surrounded himself with people who lived on the edge of the law. Small-time dealers, shady investors, men with violent reputations. To investigators, it raised a terrifying possibility. Had Bruno gotten in over his head? The press fed on the speculation. Headlines grew darker. Did business deal lead to Bruno's disappearance? Entrepreneur's secret life? The public, once united in sympathy, began to split. Some continued to see him as the hard-working young man with a family on the way. Others whispered he was responsible for his own fate. But his family refused to believe the worst. His brother told reporters he was ambitious, yes, but he wasn't reckless. He was about to become a father. He wouldn't just walk away. The discovery of Bruno's phone in Mongaguá became the investigation's central clue. Detectives canvassed the area, asking if anyone had seen a young man or a car stopped late at night. A few witnesses recalled hearing shouting near the highway, but none could describe what happened clearly. The camera footage from the area was grainy and inconclusive. It was as if Bruno had vanished into thin air. But for his wife, there was no such mystery. In her heart, she knew. Something terrible had happened. She felt it in the silence of their home, in the absence of his laughter, in the weight of nights spent alone. And yet, she clung to hope. She prepared for their baby's arrival, folding tiny clothes, setting up a crib, whispering to her child about the father they had never met. As days turned to weeks, the investigation stalled. Leads dried up. The police admitted publicly that they had no suspects, no concrete evidence, nothing but a broken phone and a trail gone cold. The case, though still open, began to fade from headlines. Other tragedies replaced Bruno's in the public eye. But for his family, the nightmare never ended. His brother refused to give up. He went on social media daily, reminding people that Bruno was still missing. He organized community searches, combing through fields, riversides, abandoned lots, hoping for a clue. Each time, they came back empty-handed, but he insisted they would keep looking until they found him. Then slowly, darker whispers began to emerge. People who had once stayed silent now came forward quietly, off the record. They spoke of Bruno's connections, of meetings late at night with men whose names were known to police. They spoke of deals gone wrong, of money owed, of threats made in private. The picture of Bruno as simply a victim grew more complicated. For his mother, none of that mattered. To her, Bruno was still her son, the boy she had raised, the man she had watched fall in love, the father-to-be she prayed would come home. She clutched his childhood photographs as if holding them tightly could bring him back. For his wife, none of the rumors could erase her truth. He was her husband, the father of her child, and she would not let his name be tarnished. But outside their home, in the darker corners of Praia Grande, a more sinister story was taking shape. And it was a story that the police could no longer ignore. The weeks after Bruno's disappearance stretched into months, and with each passing day, the silence grew heavier. Praia Grande, usually alive with beachgoers and laughter, felt subdued in certain corners. People still spoke his name in whispers, still pointed at the closed shutters of his restaurant, still wondered aloud what had really happened on that December night. But answers remained elusive. For his wife, time moved differently. She gave birth in the quiet of a hospital room, surrounded not by joy, but by an aching absence. As she cradled her newborn child, tears streamed down her face. The baby would grow up without ever seeing their father's smile, without ever hearing his voice. She whispered Bruno's name into the infant's ear, promising that they would always know who he was, that his memory would never fade. But the weight of that promise was unbearable. The police investigation continued, but behind closed doors, detectives admitted to Bruno's family what they had feared. There was little hope of finding him alive. The evidence pointed toward foul play, likely tied to the dangerous circles he had been moving in. Yet without a body, without a confession, the case remained suspended in limbo. His family was forced to live in a state of endless waiting, caught between grief and hope, unable to move forward, unable to let go. His brother's determination hardened into obsession. He spent sleepless nights scrolling through Bruno's old messages, searching for clues that might have been missed. He met with people no one else dared to approach, men with reputations steeped in violence, begging for information, for the truth. At times, he feared for his own safety, but he couldn't stop. He needed answers. Rumors swirled around Praia Grande like a storm. Some claimed Bruno had been targeted over unpaid debts. Others whispered of a deal gone bad, of powerful men who had decided his fate. The darker theories suggested he had been silenced deliberately, his disappearance meant to serve as a warning to others. And while none of these stories could be proven, they filled the void left by the absence of truth. For Bruno's mother, grief became ritual. Each morning, she lit a candle by his photograph, whispering prayers for his return. At night, she walked the streets near her home, staring at the faces of strangers, hoping against all odds that one of them might be her son. Her body weakened, her eyes dimmed, but her faith never wavered. She told anyone who would listen, "I will not stop until I know what happened to my boy." His wife, raising their child alone, struggled with a different reality. Every milestone, the first smile, the first steps, the first words, was shadowed by Bruno's absence. She took photographs, she recorded videos, she saved every moment to someday show him, as if still believing he might walk through the door and see them. But deep down, she knew. The life they had planned together was gone, replaced by a hollow space that could never truly be filled. The police, under pressure from the public, released updates every few weeks, but they were always the same. The investigation is ongoing. We are pursuing leads. No arrests were made. No suspects were named. No closure came. As the months turned into a year, Bruno's story became a cautionary tale in Praia Grande. People shook their heads when they spoke of him. He had everything: they said. A wife, a baby, a business, but he made bad choices. Others refused to believe the darker rumors. To them, Bruno remained a victim of circumstance, a young man cut down too soon. Either way, his absence left a wound that would never heal. For his family, the pain was unending. Birthdays, anniversaries, holidays, all were reminders of what they had lost. His mother's health declined, weakened by grief. His wife carried the weight of both parents, raising their child with strength she didn't know she had. His brother continued to search, even when everyone else told him to stop. And Bruno himself, his fate remained a mystery. Whether his body lay hidden in some remote place, or whether he had been erased so thoroughly that no trace would ever be found, only those who took him knew. The truth, for now, was buried in silence. In the end, the story of Bruno Lorenzo Moreira was not just about one man's disappearance. It was about ambition and risk, about love and loss, about the fragility of life, and the shadows that sometimes lurk behind success. It was about a young wife left to raise a child alone, a mother forced to grieve without answers, a brother consumed by the need for justice. And it was about a community left haunted by the question that still hangs in the air. What really happened to Bruno that night? We may never know the full truth, but one thing is certain. His story remains, etched in the hearts of those who loved him, a reminder of how quickly everything can be taken away. And for those listening now, if Bruno's story moved you, if you believe his name deserves to be remembered, don't let it fade into silence. Share his story. Keep his memory alive. Like this video, share it. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more real stories like this one. The full video is already on the channel,